All Things Conceivable, a surrogacy podcast with Nazca Fontes.
Good morning, listeners, and welcome to All Things Conceivable. Today we are talking about a host of things. It's a cornucopia of topics, but specifically we will center in on lactation. The fourth trimester is so important for surrogates and all moms, and today we've got a special guest. We've got Breanna Seibel with us today to share her motherhood journey and why she uses her social media presence to help women navigate their own journeys, whether that's infertility challenges, pregnancy, motherhood, breastfeeding, lactation, just to touch on a few topics she shares. So, Breanna, welcome today, and I can't wait to dig into our conversation together.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, I want to tell our listeners just a little bit more about you. Professionally, you're a nurse. You are also a NICU mom of 24-week micro-preemie twins, one angel baby boy, Teddy, and one baby girl, Vivi. You are a Milk Bank Challenge champion of ours, and you share your journeys of motherhood with your 200,000 plus followers on TikTok, including sharing your best hacks for breastfeeding and pumping. And one of your videos even has over 20 million views. So, wow, there's a lot to get to today because you are a champion in so many ways. So before we dive into breastfeeding and pumping, I want our audience to learn more about you in particular. So why don't you share with us your motherhood journey and what led you to start sharing your personal story on TikTok?
Okay. I'll give you guys the shortened version because otherwise it'd be like 2 hours long, which I don't think we have time for that. Nor do I think people would listen for a full 2 hours. But so my husband and I got married in 2017 and pretty much decided right away that we wanted to start trying. After about maybe a year and a half, we were like, something's not right here, like it should have happened by now. So we did infertility treatments. We did letrozole, Clomid, IUI, timing, all that good stuff. And it was absolutely awful and trying. We took a break for a couple months and then we decided to try again. And I was like, you know what? We're going to try this month. And if it doesn't work out, we're going to just take a break because those drugs were absolutely awful for me. Just mind-numbing, like so mentally hard. It was awful. And so we're like, let's do this month, and if it doesn't work, we're going to take a break. Well, lo and behold, we got pregnant with my twins, Teddy and Viviana. And the pregnancy, I was sick, but we were like so excited. Everything looked great. My blood pressure was great. Like my weight gain that they track was great. There was absolutely no signs that anything was going wrong. We had my 20-week scan and everything had looked good. The babies were both the same size. And then a couple days later at I think it was 20 weeks and 3 days or something, I started having this weird back pain and these other kind of signs. In pregnancy, you have so many changes to your body that it's hard to know what's normal and what's not because your hips hurt, your knees hurt, you have cramps. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you feel baby, sometimes you don't when you're 20 weeks. There's so many changes and it's hard to know what's normal and what's not. And so I had this back pain, which I thought was just painful because my body is shifting all over the place. And then I went to the bathroom and I wiped one day and there was a tiny, not a ton of blood, but a tiny little tinge of blood. And I went on some mom Google forums and was like, okay, what is this? And it looked like it was my mucus plug. And I'm like, oh God, this is not good. So I went in to the emergency room and I was seen. And they basically did maybe 60 minutes of monitoring, nothing else. No ultrasound to check, like literally just put the 2 little sound things on and monitored for contractions, and they didn't pick any up. And they were like, you're not in labor. Like, it's just, they chalked it up to like anxiety and being a first-time mom. Like, I believed them, you know? And so I went home, and these like cramps and this back pain that I was having didn't go away. So I started taking magnesium at home because that's what it says to do online. And at 23 weeks, it just became absolutely unbearable. And so I then went in to a different ER about 30 minutes from where I live. That I had switched my OB care from this other place to this newer place. And so we went to this different ER. And I actually was in nursing school at the time. And I got up early in the morning. It was like 4 a.m. I called my instructor. I was supposed to be going to clinicals that day. And I was like, hey, I have to, like, I'm so sorry. It's a big deal if you miss clinicals, by the way. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I need to go get checked out. I'll be there later. I promise. Like, I really need to go make sure everything's fine. So my plan was to go to the ER. I had my school bag with me. I was going to drive right from there to clinical. I told my husband, I was like, just go to work. Like, it's just anxiety. I need to get checked out. My husband thankfully didn't let me go alone because when we got there, I was in full-blown labor and my contractions were about 2 minutes apart. They were strong. I was a centimeter dilated, 100% effaced. Teddy was literally in the birthing canal, and we thought that I was going to deliver at this itty-bitty, tiny, small-town hospital with very little resources. Thankfully, the team there was honestly amazing because I'm sure I was probably one of the most critical patients that they had seen in a very, very, very long time. And I stood up, and there was, like, blood everywhere. And the provider got there in what seemed like no time because it was super early in the morning, so it wasn't, like, regular working hours. And we started magnesium. We took a steroid shot, did all the things, and they were preparing me to deliver there. They moved me to a delivery room. They had ambulances waiting outside for the babies, and it was not a great situation, especially being 23 weeks at a small town hospital with very little resources and no specialty people there. Thankfully, my doctor at the time was like, I'm going to check you. If you haven't progressed, I'm sending you right now. They had an ambulance waiting for me. He's like, I'm going to check you. If you haven't progressed, you're going now. And I hadn't progressed, and I'm very thankful that he had the guts to send me because I'm not sure that there's a lot of people that would have because they probably would have been scared that I would deliver on the way there. But I made it to a bigger hospital in the cities and was there on and off, like in and out of labor for a few days, and it was like antepartum room, and then I was in a labor and delivery room, and then antepartum, and then everything, like my bleeding had really slowed down, pretty much stopped. My cramps had kind of stopped. Everything had stopped, so they moved me to this antepartum room where I was going to stay for hopefully several months because it was April and the babies weren't due till August. We met with tons of specialty people. They checked out the babies. Everything looked great with the babies. They were never in distress. Like, I never had preeclampsia. I never had a lick of high blood pressure. I never had any sort of, like, current infection. Like, there was literally nothing other than the fact that I went into labor. They moved me to this antepartum room. We took celebratory 24-week pictures. That was a huge thing to get to 24 weeks. Every day at that point is huge. We took those pictures. I went into the bathroom, and there was a huge rush of blood. I told my husband, and he was like, it's fine. Like, I was like, no, you need to call the nurse. The nurse came in. She walked me to the bed with a bucket underneath me in case my babies fell out. I was 7 centimeters dilated. And they said at this point, like, we have to take the babies now. We have no other option. They are going to fall out of you. So they were born, they pushed the button. There was lights and the noises, the chimes going off over my room. And the OR people came and they took me, and the babies were born probably not even 15 minutes later. Like, my husband barely got his bunny suit on and barely made it. And he was in the room with me when they pushed the button. So they were born at 24 weeks and 1 day, weighing 1 pound and 6 ounces and 1 pound and 7 ounces. I told my husband, I was like, whatever you do, like, I'll be fine, but don't leave them. So that's what he did. He went to the NICU with them. And I went to the recovery room, and my mom met me in there. And it was a very up and down battle for a very, very, very long time. We then lost my son at 21 days old. And when he passed away, my daughter Vivi was even sicker than he was. And my son Teddy, he wasn't supposed to die. It was like something that was out of the blue, we didn't see coming, happened overnight. Like, it wasn't supposed to happen. But Vivi at the time was on higher ventilation settings than Teddy was. She had a bloodstream infection that we couldn't get rid of. She had double lung pneumonia and atelectasis of both lungs. She had 4 brain bleeds in 4 different areas of her brain that were not necessarily like progressing, but they weren't healing either. And she needed to be transferred to get a heart procedure done to close her PDA because her lungs were backfilling with fluid because her PDA didn't close. But she couldn't be transferred unless she was 1,000 grams, which is 2.2 pounds. And she weighed, when he died, I think around 750 grams. So she had only gained in those 3 weeks about 100 grams. Excuse me. We put Teddy in the isolette next to her after he passed away. And from that point forward, she started doing better. When we put him next to her, you could see on the monitor, her oxygen saturations went up, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, all the way up to 100, and they ended up having to turn down her vent settings, which is a great, great, great thing. Viviana was finally able to have some sort of food in her stomach, which is like breast milk, and they were able to fortify it with a product called Prolacta. The only thing that I could do while we were in the NICU, I was obviously in nursing school, so I had homework to do. My school was very gracious with me, and they allowed me to kind of, watch lecture online and come in for tests and things like that, and they were absolutely amazing, and I'm so thankful for them for allowing me to finish school still. But I took my final exams just a couple days after my son died and thankfully passed. But the only thing other than homework that I could do was pump. It was the only thing that I had control over. And they had told me, because of the stress and because of the trauma and because they were born so early, and because you're a first-time mom and your body might not know exactly what to do, it's okay if you don't make any breast milk, or if you only make it itty bit amount, every drop counts. And I remember I was in the postpartum room, and I was pumping, and I would get 1 drop, and we'd put it on a Q-tip, and my husband would sprint down to the NICU and bring it down to the NICU so that they could do their oral cares with it. And then he'd come back up and I'd have another drop on a Q-tip for him. And so he'd sprint back down there. But that's because it was like the only thing that we could do as parents, it felt like, because you can't even hold them at will. They're so unstable. So anyways, Viviana got to be on this product called Prolacta, where it's a human milk fortifier, and they add it to the breast milk to add extra calories and nutrients. And it's made from breast milk donations. And with that, and the help of Teddy from above, and by the grace of God, she started gaining weight. She was able to be transferred to this other hospital to get her heart fixed. And the day of the surgery, she weighed 1,000 grams for the first time. And she was, at the time, like one of the smallest babies that they had ever done the surgery on. 1,000 grams is itty bitty. It's like the size of an elf on a shelf. It's tiny. And she got her heart procedure done on June 2nd, and she was extubated for good on June 4th, which is my birthday, just 2 days after this procedure. And she could not have done it without the weight gain, and she could not have gotten extubated without the procedure. So it was a huge deal. We transferred back. She stayed in the NICU for 101 days. We had a heck of a time with feeding, a heck of a time with everything else going on in the NICU, as things are just very touch and go there. But we made it home. She came home below the first percentile. We started, doing some stuff at home, and she popped up to the 50th percentile, and she's stayed there. She's 2 now. She is a normal 2-year-old. We were told she might not ever walk, talk, eat, or breathe on her own because of her brain bleeds. But she does all of those things, and we are so incredibly blessed. And we had a lot of healing to do. I graduated nursing school. I now work in the ER at that hospital that I delivered at. And the hospital where I lost my son, and the hospital that we lived in the Ronald McDonald House for 101 days, where we finished nursing school. So there's a lot of full circle moments that have happened for us in the last few years.
Yes.
And then we decided to start
Breanna,
trying again.
what a story. What an emotional story of loss and triumph, right? I mean, I'm so sorry for your loss. I mean, your son's passing is an unimaginable heartache, but you just here today on your own channel, you share your story with such grace, honoring both the loss of losing Teddy and the joy that your daughter brings, and how she has roared back from all of these early, just horrific setbacks, right? To the 50th percentile and being a normal girl who brings you joy every day. And so for all the other parents who might be listening, who are navigating this kind of pain, what would you like to share with them about managing through that grief? Is there anything in particular, if you had to share one thing, like, this is what got me through?
Yeah, I would say that there's two big main things. The one thing is that I just kept thinking that I would never, ever want my child in heaven or living thinking that I didn't pursue my dreams because of them. And so that's one of the things that kept pushing me, is thinking, like, I would never want them to think that because they were born early, they ruined my life. Or, the grief overtook their mom and it's my fault. I would never want them to think that way or feel that way. So that's something that I kept in the back of my head. And the other thing is you have a choice every single day when you get up. You can choose to do what you can and control what you can control and put your trust and faith over fear, or you can choose to let the negative things in life and grief overtake you. And so it is a choice every single day, and it's still a choice that we make every single day. And it's not always easy. Some days are better than others, but it truly is a choice, and every single person has the ability and has the power to choose to be happy and to choose to find the good in even the worst situations.
Absolutely. 100%. And you've said that there's real power in sharing your story. And we certainly believe that for our intended parents and surrogates, that power in sharing helps to, provoke these feelings of optimism, right? And having faith. Either you can face fear with pessimism, or you can face it with optimism. And you are truly an example of facing that with optimism. And, no doubt you have found great reward in sharing your story. And, the story continues. And you were just starting it before. I just wanted to press pause for a little bit, but your story continues because you were in nursing school, you were in the NICU in the most dire of situations with your children. And that experience of not only being in the NICU and the experience of going through professional training as a nurse and the experience of pumping in those very early days when you thought you might not get anything has helped provide a lot of context to this story and more hope for others. And it's something that a lot of moms can relate to. So let's continue this story. You got home, you had your daughter now that you were focusing on, you were getting your nursing degree, you had the experience of the NICU, the experience of those early days of pumping. So what happens next? How did your story continue?
So I finished nursing school. I got that job at the same hospital. We came home, worked on healing, and one of the ways that I found healing was in sharing the story of my children, and specifically just sharing Teddy's story. And I felt like if I first of all, I want him to be remembered. I don't want him to ever be forgotten. I mean, it doesn't matter if a baby is, around for 4 weeks in your belly or if they're around for 4 months. The pain and the hurt is the same. And so I would never want him to be forgotten. And so I started sharing his story and our story online just in hopes of, putting it out there for people to remember him, in hopes of helping other people, because we had a very, very, very difficult journey in the NICU, and we kind of experienced the worst of situations and the best of situations, in my opinion. And we did it through some really, really difficult things. Nursing school is hard on its own, let alone NICU life, preterm labor, trauma, loss of a child, then sitting there and watching your other child fight for their life for 101 days. It's a lot of really hard things, and I just thought, if I could share it and provide hope or advice or keep his story going in any way, shape, or form, it's going to be beneficial. And at the very, very, very least, it was incredibly healing for me to be able to share the story and kind of relive things in my head and get to connect with other parents that have gone through similar things, and maybe not the same things, but the hurt is the same.
Yeah, I can absolutely imagine that it is. But what you've managed to do is, find the silver lining to some of this, right? The ability now as a NICU nurse, which, right, that's a little bit full circle. Now you're actually, relating to patients who are in the NICU, sharing your personal story, giving them hope, encouraging them to take one foot and put one foot in front of the other every day. And also harnessing and leveraging, Breanna, the experience of, what you described as those early days with the, one drop on a Q-tip, right? And trying to nourish these babies in the NICU. And I want to focus a little bit on that because that's something that I think is probably more impactful to women in those early days, and people can imagine that it is. Every ounce, every drop of breast milk is precious and can make a difference in whether or not that tiniest of babies survives to see another day. So you learn to take that experience and connect with others through your social channel. So let's really get into this a little bit more about the breastfeeding and pumping. And how is it that you learned along the way? What were some of the tricks, the tips, the hacks? Like, how did you go from trying to eke out that one drop on a Q-tip to having an experience that really encourages others in terms of growing, maintaining breast supply or breast milk supply? Let's talk a little bit about that journey in particular.
Yeah, well, let me first start off by saying, like, when I gave birth, I was like as green as they come when it comes to breastfeeding and pumping. I knew absolutely nothing. I didn't even have a pump because, again, I was only 24 weeks, but also a new mom, and I hadn't researched any of that stuff yet. I had no idea about anything. Thankfully, there were some lactation consultants in the NICU that were able to, like, help out with some things. There's so many great resources online, and, like, I would constantly seek out other people's videos and seeing, like, what they were doing, what was working for them, and what I could do. But I think the main thing was right away in the beginning is just keeping, like, a very tight pumping schedule. I was very, very, very determined to have something. And I knew the benefit of even one single drop. There's antibodies in it, there's stem cells in it, there's all of these great, amazing things for your baby. And even one drop has like millions of cells in it. Millions. So I was so determined to give them anything on a Q-tip, you know? But then once I like got into actual pumping at first, it was incredibly painful because I didn't have a pump that fit me. So thankfully the lactation consultants helped me out with that. And that's when I was really able to like stay on a pumping schedule comfortably and get through it, and actually like started being able to produce enough to be able to donate over 4,000 ounces.
Yeah, I just had another guest on this show that said something very similar to you about the size of the pump. And most women don't realize that the size of the equipment really does matter in terms of increasing their milk supply. So I love to just underscore this point one more time for our listeners. At Conceivabilities, we started the Milk Bank Challenge during the infant formula shortage during COVID, and that was done in order to help replenish milk banks nationwide. And we knew that we had an audience in our own surrogate population that was already producing milk, and many of them wanted to keep, producing. And this was a great way for them to segue into helping others on top of their own surrogacy journeys. And it's grown into such an impactful program, and one that we're just so very, very proud of. And you, in particular, are a big Milk Bank Challenge champion of ours. So why are you so committed to helping women learn more about donating excess milk, not just about how to, pump and maintain their supply, but how to donate in addition to that?
Well, for one, that product Prolacta that Vivi was on that allowed her to get her weight up and then she could get her heart procedure done would not have existed without milk bank donors. So my daughter would not have survived without previous milk bank donors. The other thing is that I remember when we were up in my postpartum room with all of this traumatic information. I mean, I think I blacked out like half of the things that happened. So much stuff happened, and there's all this information being thrown at you and all of these things. And I just remember being so worried that I wouldn't be able to make any breast milk, and knowing that like that's what my babies needed. And one of the nurses told me, she was like, well, don't worry, we have a milk bank here. Like, if you don't make enough, there's moms who have donated. And it was such a relief off my shoulders, even though I was making a couple drops and, giving them what they needed at that exact point in time. Just knowing that that was available for us had we had needed it was a huge weight off my shoulders. And any weight that you can take off of a parent's shoulders, specifically a new mom's shoulders, is absolutely huge and means more than you could ever imagine when you're in the trenches. So if, like, for example, I chose to donate back to Prolacta because, of our connection with them and because I think that they're an amazing product. But any donation, even if it's not going to a milk bank, even if it's going directly to a mom or, anywhere else, like any donation is just, it's something that money can't buy, and it's a gift that like never stops giving to that baby.
Oh, when I said that we're most proud of this initiative, I don't think I can emphasize that enough. I think now through this Milk Bank Challenge, we are able to supply roughly 10% now of donated milk to milk banks nationwide. I mean, that's just an incredible amount of breast milk. And it's just by raising awareness. And so, a lot of women who are lactating and breastfeeding, aside from the challenges that they might be experiencing through that endeavor, simply don't even know that they can donate excess breast milk to banks. So, I mean, I guess maybe my question is going to come at you twofold here. What do you wish lactating moms knew about breastfeeding or pumping before they started their journey? You said when you had your children, you were very green. Now, obviously, that was because they came quite early, but a lot of women, up till the very, bitter end of delivery, whether it's 38, 39, 40 weeks or beyond, they still consider themselves green. They still don't know a lot. So, what do you wish lactating moms knew about breastfeeding or pumping before they started their journey?
Well, for one, I wish that it was more talked about prior to giving birth so that we didn't have to have this big learning curve. But I guess a big thing would be that it's okay if you don't have the outcome that you originally want. It's okay. And there is a way to get there. And don't compare yourself to other people because everybody's hormones are different. Everybody's bodies are different. Everybody has different levels of stress. Everybody has different pumps. Everybody has different amounts of time to pump. But if your goal is to pump and if your goal is to breastfeed and if your goal is to feed your baby, there is a way to get there. And it's probably not you. It's probably the lack of tools or the lack of resources or not like having the right flange size or not getting hydrated enough or XYZ. It's not you. It's everything else. And that sounds kind of crazy to say, but like there is a way to get there if you keep going, but man, it's hard.
It is hard, right? And so, when I said I was going to come at you like with a two-pronged question here, so what do you wish they knew, but also what are some of the mistakes that they make? You're kind of touching upon this now, but if you think, gosh, I wish I didn't see these women, doing a couple of these things because they're missteps, and I learned from making those same mistakes and missteps, what would they be?
Okay, well, one, if you have a pump that doesn't fit you, don't use it because I did and I was absolutely shredded. Like blisters, oh my gosh, it was so painful. And then it's impossible to heal from it. It takes forever. So make sure that you actually they sell these little things where you can measure your flange size, and your flange size can change throughout your pumping journey. So like when you first give birth, it's likely going to be different then than it is like 3 months down the road. So they make little inserts that you can put inside your pumps. I would recommend buying a couple different sizes and then measuring and making sure that you have the right flange size because in the beginning, like your body's not used to it. And so if you're using the wrong flange size, it's going to be that much harder and it's going to be painful. Another thing that I wish moms knew is that when you breastfeed after you give birth or when you pump after you give birth, it helps the uterus contract back down to its original size, and it helps prevent postpartum hemorrhage. So it's not always like, I feel like on TV they show you like holding your baby and like it's like this amazing, beautiful moment, and it is and it can be, but it can also be really painful. And that's normal and that's okay. But flange size for sure. Learn from me. Do not use a flange size that's like way too big because the healing is not it.
That's a great one. Is there something that you get asked the most from your community on social media? Like, is there one question that keeps coming up time and again?
Regarding breastfeeding is what pump did I use? And then the other one is how to increase your supply, because I was a massive oversupplier and I wasn't exactly in the beginning, but in the end I was.
And is there something that used as a hack to increase that supply? I know you mentioned the scheduling, right? Making sure that you maintain a pumping schedule. And I've heard that time and again. So that's a great tip. Anything else that might lend itself to making more supply?
Yeah, so well, first, when it comes to the pumps, like for me, a big thing was convenience. I don't like being attached to a wall, so I knew I had to get a good wearable pump. So that's something for me. I know like there are some women who had like the pumps that have like battery packs and they'd put them in a backpack and they'd wear them like this. For me, like I know for a fact if I can't just like throw it in my shirt and do other things, I'm not going to do it. So like that was one of the big things for me that allowed me to stay on a schedule, was having a good set of wearable pumps that like worked with my body. Another thing was keeping that set schedule. I pumped around the clock every 3 hours, like around the clock. And I didn't drop any night pumps until, so they were born in April. And I think I dropped my night pump for the first time in like September. So it was a long time, and I had already had a very established supply. I had already had a very established freezer supply. At that point, I had already like known I had more than enough to donate, and I wanted to donate and honor my son. So I was like, if I drop a night pump for my own sanity, like I'm still gonna have enough, and like that's totally fine. But I knew my supply was gonna drop a little bit when I dropped a night pump, which it did. But like whatever, I needed sleep at that point. And then the other thing is when I got my period back is my supply then dipped again. And that's normal. But no one tells you, at least they didn't tell me, that that's normal and can be normal. So I started power pumping in the mornings, which is like 15 minutes on, 10 minutes off, 15 minutes on, 10 minutes off. And it's way easier to do if you have a wearable pump. Like I had a little baby that I had to take care of, but I could throw in a load of laundry. I could do the dishes. I could even give her a bottle during that time if I wanted to, because I was using wearable pumps. But the power pumping, where you like basically are mocking cluster feeding, is huge for increasing your supply, because breast milk is like a supply and demand type of feedback system. So the more you pump, the more milk you're going to make.
Yeah. Again, second time I've heard this power pumping. It was a new concept for me. And so I love that you've shared this. And so for our listeners, remember this: if you are lactating and looking to increase your supply, power pumping. And I'm going to be remiss if I don't ask this question. The people who are listening to this podcast are going to say, why didn't she ask this question? And that is, a lot of people want to know, what is your breast pump of choice?
Okay. So I will tell you, I have tried a lot of breast pumps. A lot. The hospital pump, the Medela pump that everybody seems to love. So many people like are diehard Medelas. It was too rough for me. It was too much for me. And so then I got the Willow 3.0. It's a wearable pump that is spill proof. The issue with that for me is that when I was an oversupplier, the bags weren't big enough. So then I would have to like stop in the middle, change the bag. So then I switched to the Willow Go, which is not a pump that is like spill proof, but it has little holes at the top, but they have 7-ounce containers. So I was like a diehard Willow Go. I'll probably use the Willow Go again, but I have also been sent by some companies some really great pumps that are super affordable, that you can get on Amazon for like $100. And there's one that I got from Costco that was like $150 or something, came with all the flange sizes, it was like heated. It had like, a charging case. I'm definitely going to try this one. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it was like Eufy or something. It's on my TikTok if you want to look. And it's super affordable. So I'm going to try those ones too. But like my first round, I was like diehard Willow Go. live or die by the willow because of the 7-ounce containers.
Yep. And not to tease our listeners, but you've now hinted at the second time around. So do you want to share any particular update with our listeners?
Yeah, so my husband and I, because he played a part too. I'm pregnant with my baby, my second pregnancy, and it's a boy that's due in April as well. So, yay.
Congratulations. What great news. And everything's going well this time so far? Feeling
Yep,
great?
so a lot of monitoring. I know what to look for this time. I'm on progesterone, which can help. Getting ultrasounds every 2 weeks to monitor cervical length. And I am living in faith over fear. I'm going to deliver full term, and everyone's going to be healthy, and it's going to be amazing.
100%. I love that. We're all rooting for you. Well, in the couple minutes that we have left, I want to make sure that we talk about two quick issues. One is I want to wrap up this lactation topic and talk a little bit, just briefly, about milk storage and donation. So, if you want to share with our listeners, I love very short, like high impactful lists. So, what are the 1, 2, 3 best things that someone can do if they're lactating and want to donate their breast milk?
Sign up for the Milk Bank Challenge. But actually, because the milk banks have different requirements, so sign up early so that you can make sure you're meeting those requirements. 2, start stashing it up in your freezer. Keep a good schedule going. And even if you donate just like a tiny bit, like that's more than enough. And then 3, when it comes to freezer organization, because I know you mentioned that, don't follow me for freezer organization because my freezer is a disaster.
So that would be a definite don't. A do and a don't. 2 do's and a
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. And finally, Breanna, let's talk very briefly about you and your fabulous career as a nurse. We have an Empower Nurses Challenge in addition to the Milk Bank Challenge that we started to help support nurses with specifically compassion fatigue. And compassion fatigue is something a lot of nurses struggle with in all facets of nursing, whether they're in the NICU, whether they're in oncology, whether they're in memory units. It's really a struggle. So how do you cope with this, and what can you share with how you've navigated it and any coping strategies that work for you?
Yeah, that's a big one. I am an ER nurse. I work in an inner city ER. We see around 200 patients a day. I think we have I don't want to say how many beds. We have a lot of beds. And nursing is one of the jobs that has the highest rate of burnout. It's a very, very, very difficult job. But I think one of the things that I really try to keep in the back of my mind, and this is, because we were in patients for over 100 days, is that you are seeing people during the worst time of their lives. And no, it's not okay for them to harass you. It's not okay for them to physically abuse you. It's not okay for them to verbally abuse you, because I go to work every single day and all of those things happen almost every day. And that is a reality that a lot of people are not aware of. But it's not okay that those things happen. But we do need to keep in the back of our mind that we are getting people at the absolute worst times of their lives. And it is an honor and a privilege to be able to take care of people during the worst times of their lives. And so if you can keep that in the back of your mind, I think that kind of helps a little bit. But I also think that we need to focus more on self-care, making sure that we're not picking up extra shifts just because the hospital is short, because guess what? They're always going to be short. We need to make sure that we are taking care of our family first and doing things that you love when you get home and really trying the best to leave it all at the door, even though that's nearly impossible when you see people coding and you see people die and you have to perform CPR on someone and then literally 5 minutes later walk into the next patient's room and act like everything's fine when you just were a part of trying to save this whole human being and their life and you weren't able to do it. So it's extremely hard, but if you can try your best to leave things at the door, to really focus on self-care and to do the things that you love to do, put your family first, put yourself first, and not pick up the extra shift every single time because your unit's short, because your unit's always going to be short. I think that that's probably the best way to try to avoid that fatigue, but I don't know that it's even possible in today's healthcare system.
Agreed. That's a great lesson, great feedback, and great advice. And, we have been really fortunate today to have moms like you sharing your experience, and there's a lot of power in the sharing of that knowledge. And of course, you have a great following on TikTok, and you have really impacted your followers through the sharing of your journey, both as a mom, a nurse, a Milk Bank Challenge donor, and no doubt that you've learned lessons in return from your audience. So what's been the most rewarding part in sharing your journey with your own audience on TikTok?
One of my favorite things in the entire world is when people send me a message and they say, like, I saw your story and it resonated with me and it helped me. Thank you for not making me feel so alone. That feels like a big, warm, fuzzy blanket hug to me. And it feels like I'm making a difference.
Well, you are. Absolutely. And in return, when you said it was an honor and a privilege to help people through some of the darkest moments of their life, it's been an honor and a privilege to have you here today sharing your personal story with our listeners. So thank you so much for everything that you've shared and everything that you do for others.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm just so excited. Everyone go follow me on TikTok at Breanna Seibel, Breanna Seibel, and my Instagram.
Do it. Yes, do it. It's great. You'll learn a lot. Well, thank you, Breanna. I've loved having you here today, and it was a real pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much.
Wow, what a story, listeners. What a job I have. I really get to talk to some of the most remarkable, strongest women out there who are really navigating through very dark moments to emerge triumphant and sharing their story to impact and help others through similar challenges in life. So I don't know that it's so much an aha moment that I have today, rather than a reinforcement that there are silver linings to be found in every dark cloud. Sometimes you just have to look and be patient, but they're there. And when you find them, you can use them to really help and support others through similar challenges. So thank you to Breanna and to others who always come and are willing to share the toughest moments of their lives. And listeners, please consider supporting our Milk Bank Challenge if you are someone who is lactating or knows of a lactating woman, because every ounce of liquid gold helps to support the tiniest of lives. Until next time, take care.
At Conceivabilities, we believe that everyone who wants to become a parent can. Our agency has helped build thousands of families for nearly 25 years. Whether you are an intended parent ready to fulfill your family destiny, a surrogate answering your calling, or an egg donor wanting to expand what's possible in your life, we are your people. See how matching matters. Learn more by joining our Surrogacy Learning Center community at surrogacylearningcenter.conceivabilities.com.